so much for taking this time out on a Saturday morning. I totally understand that there is a lot of sacrifice that we have given to our personal times to be here. But then I think why have it at this time is something that we dwelled upon internally also. We discussed why this topic and when and how. I met Pooja about 1.5 months back. We were discussing that there's something that is required to be discussed. There are a lot of issues which came to our minds. And then from then on, the thought stayed in my mind. We talked about the dates, when, how, where. Ultimately, when the discussion with respect to the budget session started, we realized that this topic is going to be important to talk about, and there are a lot of challenges which are required to be talked about, and especially at this time when the government has spoken about certain aspects of the challenges which are being faced under the insolvency and bankruptcy regime. So that looked like an opportune time, and then the topics that we decided, how do we choose the topics, what kind of topics. So we kept the first session to be a little general, because here we are going to talk about multiple issues, and those issues will be primarily around the group insolvency, the cross-border insolvency, the personal insolvency. So I think we thought that we will also address certain challenges which have been discussed in the budget session. So that was the first topic. The second topic was in relation to the valuation, because that is also one of the key concerns for a lot of insolvency professionals, and also in fact, organizations for that matter. So that second topic is going to talk about valuation. And then the third topic was the most burning topic, something that I've been speaking about for some time now. And this started in 2020, in fact, as a journey. Because in the matter of Winter Hills is when we actually got this whole concept of reverse insolvency. At that point of time, there were a lot of criticism to this whole concept. Till date, I do see there to be a lot of criticism with respect to this as a concept, reverse insolvency. But then that is why there was a need felt to probably have this opportunity to talk about reverse insolvency, talk about the challenges which the real estate is facing in terms of insolvency, because that's a completely different dynamics altogether. As an organization also, real estate companies with multiple projects is a completely different ballgame altogether. So the third session is going to talk about that, and we are going to hear some interesting perspectives from the speakers in this regard. The most important element that we thought why we should have this topic also for discussion is because 7 years have passed. Now, in the last 7 years of the promulgation of IBC, we all as practitioners, as insolvency professionals, we are seeing the development in different ways. So we need to understand how has the entire insolvency regime developed in the last few years. So that was the whole idea. Now, if you look at the numbers that the government has in fact spoken about in the budget session, our learned finance minister has spoken about, it says that more than 1,000 cases of distressed companies have been resolved, resulting in creditors directly recovering more than rupees 3.3 lakh crores. In addition, 28,000 cases involving 10 lakh crores have been disposed of even prior to admission. So if we look at the numbers, is it really looking promising? Are we heading in the right direction? Because in 7 years, if this is the number we are talking about, was this the intent of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code? I think that is something that is important to be discussed. The second aspect is the delays in terms of the resolution. The average time in today's date that is being taken is more than 600 days, which is almost about 2 years. Now, these 2 years are substantial time actually for the resolution of these stressed assets, and that probably could also, in fact, if you compare these 2 years to what was in the earlier regime, in the SICA or the BIFA regime, I remember having dealt with a matter which started in 1991 as a SIC company and ultimately got resolved only in 2014. So from that kind of a timeline that we are looking at, is 2 years too bad? Can we actually use the same stick for all sizes of organizations? Is the kind of timeline that we have actually envisaged too limited in terms of resolution of companies which are big in size, where we are not able to find the resolution? The RAs. So I think there are certain things which are required to be thought about. So that was behind our having this whole concept of having this conference. There are other aspects also that we are going to touch upon. One is about pre-packs. Because if pre-packs are to be introduced, why did we introduce Section 29A in the first place? Or is it that Section 29A today has lost its relevance? When it was introduced, probably it was the need of the hour. But over a period of time, probably 29A is actually losing its relevance. Or we are going to bring a certain kind of a hybrid where we are looking at introducing the concept of debtor in possession even for larger companies. The other question that still will remain to be answered, and I'll let the speakers talk about it when we start the session, is if the debtor in possession model did not work for the MSMEs, how do we think that it is going to work for the larger companies? But then there are people who also have thoughts around debtor in possession model being a good model because it is the promoters who have the best idea of their business, and not all the promoters are actually having the wrong intention. So bringing the debtor in possession model could probably work better than leaving it the entire organization in the hands of the creditors. So that was another aspect. Now, if we look at the several contributors with respect to why PPIRPs have been limited, there are some things that we thought. One was that it involves many additional processes as compared to the normal CIRPs, which makes it less attractive to the stakeholders, and it is perceived as time-consuming and costly affair. Second is the corporate debtors and lenders also sometimes prefer to have a one-time kind of a settlement over the cumbersome process of PPIRPs, as OTS definitely is quicker and is a more straightforward resolution. Then there are also the restrictions on haircuts, because restrictions on haircuts and the impact which the promoter control under the PPIRP make it less favorable as compared to the normal CIRP. So my thinking is that these are some of the challenges which actually are still existing so far as the PPIRP model is concerned. The second aspect is with relation to personal insolvency. Now, in today's time, if we look at the data and statistics, there are about 2,800 applications which have been filed, which involves an amount of almost about 1,88,155 crores. Out of these, 401 cases were initiated by guarantors themselves, and the resolution rate has been poor, with only 4 cases concluding in a resolution plan within a 4-year span, and an overall recovery rate of about 2%. So there could be various factors which actually could be the reason why the personal insolvency has also not taken off as was expected it to. One, of course, is the lack of asset information. A significant barrier actually in terms of being able to have a success in terms of personal insolvency is the lack of asset information. The second is interim moratorium under Section 96. I think when the code provides for the interim moratorium, it allows the guarantors to stall the recovery actions by merely filing an application. So that could be one reason. The third could be look-back period, because look-back period for the avoidance transactions in personal insolvency starts from the initiation of the bankruptcy process, unlike in CIRP where it starts from the application admission date. So this also, the discrepancy also could result in many transactions falling outside the scope due to delays in initiating the bankruptcy process. There are various other reasons, but I think these are some of the reasons. Now look at avoidance transactions. A substantial amount of INR 3,70,942 crores is involved in 1,237 cases of avoidance transactions, and this could be much more. This is only a data that is available online. Out of this, only 293 cases have been disposed of, with a meager recovery of about 6,599 crores. Notably, around 5,500 crores of the recovered amount pertains to a single case, that is JP Infra. So when a mortgage of land in favor of the bank was set aside. Additionally, in fact, 947 cases have been resolved through CIRP, and around 233 applications for avoidance transactions involving about 1.24 lakh crore are still pending. So despite the involvement of significant sums of money, these applications do not get proper attention, both from the stakeholders, also from the judicial authorities. And many of the applications are filed without proper backing and without proper evidence. And I'm sure you as IRPs know it more than me. And with focus on actions rather than results, the banks also find themselves deprived of the recoveries, of course. Then the concept of group insolvency, I'm not going to touch too much about it, but then because it is a part of the first session. Now, group insolvency, in fact, there are some jurisdictions who have adopted either procedural coordination or substantive consolidation as a part of the group insolvency. So substantive consolidation will mean the consolidation of your assets, liabilities, operations of multiple entities. And in case we are talking about the procedural coordination, then it will be aligning the procedural aspects like filing requirements, your timelines, your coordination, etc., without mingling the entities per se. So in the Indian context, I think because we do not have the framework as yet with respect to group insolvency, a lot has been left to the adjudicating authorities to discover. And so each authority is deciding it in the manner that they deem appropriate. Some reference, of course, is taken to the jurisdictions outside of India, but it is still, it's like an elephant in the dark room where we are trying to discover what is the best model which will work for which organization. So that is something that we are going to touch upon. The other aspect that I wanted to talk about was ESG. ESG, as a part of the insolvency resolution, is supported by the overall environment of integration of ESG in the corporate laws in India. I think under Section 135 of the Companies Act also, it in fact makes it mandatory for companies to provide for, earning profits to contribute towards CSR. Now, this expenditure under Schedule 7 of the Companies Act includes various activities which fulfills the ESG goals. So, and especially in relation to the activities of environmental sustainability, social business projects. So, in a similar pitch, if the business responsibility and sustainability reporting is one aspect of it, if we take a step ahead and actually, talk about making it mandatory or probably, optional. I mean, that is something that we could debate about. But include ESG in our resolution plans as a part of the process under Section 31. I think with more deliberations on the pros and cons of it, we could probably arrive at some kind of a solution around this as well. So these were some of the thoughts. And lastly, I think it is important to also touch upon the part of the government and the judiciary, because there is a pressing need to invest in the building of the capacity of adjudicating authorities. NCLT and NCLAT at the moment are sitting in different places without having proper infrastructure. There are inadequate number of adjudicating members. There are inadequate staffing, inadequate training, and therefore the infrastructure of these institutions require a complete overhauling in that sense. Government has taken up in the last year some efforts with respect to filling up the vacancies. But I think there is a lot more which is required to be done. So I'm sure we are going to deliberate on all of that in the day-to-day. So thank you so much, all of you, for coming once again. And I will fail in my duty if I do not thank my colleagues who have actually put in this entire conference today. Especially Ankita. Ankita Panikar has been, the instrumental. She is the convener of the conference, not me. I would give the entire credit to her. And along with her, Pranshu, Chandni, Rachna, who have really worked day in and day out under the guidance of Mr. Jyoti Chaudhary, who have really made this possible. So thank you, all of you.